Commander Isabella Winter stood at the observation deck of Arctic Defense Station 0, her eyes fixed on the approaching storm front. But this wasn't just any winter storm. The swirling masses of clouds held within them the heat signatures of 300 Pyraxian warships, their hulls glowing like embers against the Arctic twilight. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying across the frost-hardened steel of the command center. Lieutenant Raj Patel's fingers flew across the thermal imaging displays, tracking the invasion force's descent pattern. "They're maintaining a tight formation, Commander. Surface temperature readings of their ships are holding at 180 degrees Celsius. They're burning through their energy reserves just staying operational in our atmosphere." He paused, adjusting his readings. "At this rate, they'll deplete their primary heat cores in 72 hours. Isabella allowed herself a slight smile. The Pyraxians, a species evolved on a planet that never dropped below 40 degrees Celsius, had chosen the wrong world to invade. More importantly, they'd chosen the wrong season. "General Torres," she activated the global command link, "the invasion force is exactly where we predicted. Operation Permafrost is a go." The response came immediately, "Acknowledged, Commander Winter. All Arctic Defense Force units are mobilizing. Show these hotheads what real cold feels like." Isabella turned to her executive officer, Major Diana Frost. "Status of the weather control arrays?" "All 16 arrays are operational and synchronized, Commander. We can drop the temperature by another 30 degrees across a 1,000-mile radius whenever you give the word." The Arctic Defense Force had been preparing for this moment since first contact revealed the Pyraxians' biological weakness. While the aliens saw Earth's varying climate as a primitive environmental feature to be conquered, humanity had spent millennia adapting to it, learning from it, and eventually, mastering it. "Signal all ground teams," Isabella ordered. "I want our mobile units in position before those ships make landfall. And get me a direct feed from Forward Operating Base Glacier." The main display flickered to life, showing Captain Marcus Stone's frost-covered face. His team of specialized cold-weather operators had been tracking the Pyraxian scout parties for weeks, gathering intelligence on their cold-weather gear and tactical vulnerabilities. "Commander," Stone reported, his breath visible in the Arctic air, "their ground forces are deploying early. They're setting up some kind of heat distribution network. Massive thermal generators every half-kilometer." Isabella nodded. It was exactly what their intelligence had predicted. The Pyraxians were trying to terraform their landing zone, creating a bubble of artificial heat to support their troops. It was clever, but it would be their undoing. "How are their soldiers handling the cold?" "Poorly," Stone answered, satisfaction evident in his voice. "Their environmental suits are impressive, but they're burning through power cells like crazy. We've observed 3 units already requesting emergency evacuation due to system failures. Temperature's only -20 out here, they haven't seen anything yet." Isabella turned to her tactical display, where red dots representing Pyraxian forces were spreading across the Arctic Circle. Their landing pattern was methodical, professional, exactly what you'd expect from a species that had conquered 17 worlds. But they had never faced a challenge like Earth's winter. "Begin Phase 1, she commanded. "All units maintain distance and observe. Let them commit their forces fully before we reveal our capabilities." She paused, considering the next move carefully. "And spin up the weather arrays to 30%. Let's give them a taste of what's coming." Throughout the command center, officers and technicians moved with practiced precision. They had drilled for this scenario countless times, but now it was real. Humanity's first major planetary defense would be fought not with overwhelming firepower or superior numbers, but with the very environment that had shaped their species. The massive weather control arrays, hidden beneath the ice caps, hummed to life. Clouds began to thicken, and the wind picked up speed. Temperature gauges across the region began to drop steadily. "Message from Pyraxian Command," Lieutenant Patel announced. They're requesting immediate diplomatic contact. Put them through, Isabella ordered, straightening her uniform. The holographic projection materialized in the center of the command deck. Supreme Commander Tyrax of the Pyraxian Expansion Fleet, his crystalline skin glowing with internal heat, stood before them. Even through the projection, Isabella could see the concern in his faceted eyes. Commander Winter, his translator rendered his heat-based language into English, we have claimed this world for the Pyraxian Empire. Your resistance is futile. We offer you one chance to surrender and accept our protection. Isabella met his gaze steadily. Supreme Commander, you've made a serious miscalculation. Earth isn't yours to claim, and winter is coming. As if on cue, the first snowflakes began to fall outside the command center's windows. The storm that would change the course of human history was beginning, and Isabella Winter was ready to show the galaxy why you never invade Earth during winter. Across the Arctic Circle, 3,000 human soldiers prepared for battle, their advanced cold-weather gear and lifetime of experience their greatest weapons. They weren't just fighting for Earth, they were fighting with it. And Earth's winter would prove to be the most powerful ally humanity could have asked for. The blizzard came like a white wall, engulfing the Pyraxian forward base in minutes. Through her tactical visor, Captain Amara Singh watched the alien soldiers struggling to maintain their positions. Their heat signatures blazed against the snow like dying stars, each one gradually dimming as Earth's cold seeped through their defenses. Strike Team Avalanche, report positions, she whispered into her comm unit, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. Team 1 in position, East Ridge. Team 2, ready on the western approach. Team 3, holding at the southern perimeter. Amara smiled grimly. The Pyraxians had no idea they were surrounded. Their thermal sensors, calibrated for detecting heat signatures, were worse than useless in these conditions. The Arctic Defense Force soldiers, wearing their advanced cold-masking suits, were practically invisible. At the Pyraxian base, massive heating towers strained against the falling temperature, their energy cores pulsing with desperate intensity. The aliens had constructed them in a hexagonal pattern, creating a bubble of warmth that was rapidly shrinking as Commander Winter's weather control systems pushed the mercury ever lower. All teams, execute Operation Shatterstorm, Amara ordered. Remember your training. Let the cold do the work. Her soldiers moved like ghosts through the whiteness, their white camouflaged forms barely distinguishable from the driving snow. Each carried specially designed cryocharges, not to kill, but to overwhelm the Pyraxians' heating systems. The first explosion came from the eastern perimeter. The cryocharge detonated in a burst of supercooled gas, instantly freezing one of the heating towers. The structure's metal skin contracted violently in the extreme cold, cracking like glass. Within seconds, the tower collapsed, taking a section of the heat shield with it. Pyraxian soldiers rushed to respond, but their movements were sluggish, their combat suits struggling to maintain operational temperature. Their plasma rifles, designed for the heat of their homeworld, sputtered and died in the Arctic air. By the eternal flame, a Pyraxian officer's translated voice crackled over their intercepted communications, how are they surviving in this? Where are they? The answer came in the form of more explosions as teams 2 and 3 struck simultaneously. 3 more heating towers fell, their destruction choreographed to create maximum disruption to the base's thermal network. The protective bubble of heat began to collapse. Back at Arctic Defense Station 0, Commander Winter watched the operation unfold on her tactical displays. Status report on the weather system? Major Frost consulted her readings. Temperature continuing to drop, Commander. We're at -45 Celsius and falling. The storm front is holding stable over the target area. Excellent. Signal Captain Singh to begin Phase 2. Amara received the order and immediately activated her suit's enhanced mobility systems. All teams, switch to close-quarter tactics. Remember, we want prisoners, not casualties. The Arctic Defense Force soldiers emerged from the storm like winter spirits, their forms barely visible through the swirling snow. They moved with practiced efficiency, their bodies adapted to the cold through years of training and enhanced by their suits' technology. The Pyraxian soldiers, despite their advanced weapons and armor, were helpless. Their heating systems, overwhelmed by the combination of natural and artificially enhanced cold, began shutting down one by one. Those who tried to fight found their weapons non-functional, their movements restricted by failing environmental controls. "Please," the Pyraxian base commander's voice came through their translators, "we surrender. Our soldiers are dying." Amara approached the alien officer, whose crystalline skin had dulled to a dangerous pale blue. "Order your troops to power down their weapons. Medical units are standing by with heated transport vehicles." Within an hour, the entire Pyraxian forward base had been secured. Emergency medical teams moved quickly, transferring the hypothermic aliens to specialized warming chambers. Not a single shot had been fired, Earth's winter had done all the fighting. "Base secured, Commander Winter," Amara reported. 87 prisoners, no casualties on either side. The Pyraxians' technology is impressive, but they never stood a chance in these conditions. Commander Winter's voice came through clear and confident. "Well done, Captain. But this is just the beginning. The main Pyraxian force is mobilizing, and they'll have learned from this defeat. Prepare your teams for Phase 3. As if in response to her words, the storm intensified. The Pyraxian prisoners watched in awe and fear as their human captors moved effortlessly through conditions that had brought their advanced army to its knees. They were beginning to understand that they had grossly underestimated not just humanity's technology, but their fundamental adaptation to their world's most extreme conditions. In orbit, Supreme Commander Tyrax received the report of the forward base's fall with growing concern. His military advisors had assured him that no species could fight effectively in such cold, yet the humans seemed to thrive in it. For the first time in his long military career, he faced an enemy that turned his force's greatest strength, their heat-based technology, into a crippling weakness. "Send word to the fleet," he ordered, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation. "Begin emergency modifications to all environmental systems. We must adapt, or this world of ice will become our tomb." But as his officers rushed to comply, a new alert sounded throughout the command ship. The humans' weather control system was powering up again, and this time, the readings were off the scale. The real battle for Earth was about to begin, and winter itself would be humanity's greatest weapon. The aurora borealis danced across the night sky, but these weren't natural lights. The massive energy discharge from 16 synchronized weather control arrays had turned the Arctic atmosphere into a canvas of shifting colors. Commander Winter watched from her command center as the greatest weather manipulation system ever built pushed Earth's atmosphere to its limits. "All arrays at maximum power," Major Frost reported, her voice tense. Core temperature in the operation zone dropping below -60 Celsius. "The storm, it's becoming something we've never seen before." The tactical display showed the Pyraxian main force, nearly 50,000 troops, attempting to establish a defensive line along the 70th parallel. Their ships hung in low orbit, pumping heat into the atmosphere in a desperate attempt to maintain a habitable zone for their ground forces. "They're adapting faster than expected," Lieutenant Patel observed, tracking the alien heat signatures. "Their new environmental suits are showing better cold resistance." "But at what cost?" Isabella smiled grimly. "Those suits must be drinking power like nothing we've ever seen." Report from Captain Singh. The command screen flickered to life, showing Amara Singh's face, frost coating her tactical visor. "Strike teams in position, Commander. The Pyraxians have tripled their heat generator output, but they're burning through fuel cells at an unsustainable rate. Estimate they'll start losing power in the next 4 hours." "They won't need 4 hours," Isabella replied, watching the storm system's development. "Begin Operation Deep Freeze." All units, execute at will. Across the vast Arctic battlefield, 3,000 human soldiers began their advance. They moved in specialized Arctic vehicles, their tracks designed to grip the ice while maintaining near-silent operation. Each vehicle carried advanced cryoweapons, designed not to kill but to overwhelm the aliens' heating systems. Supreme Commander Tyrax, watching from his flagship, finally understood the true nature of his enemy. The humans weren't just surviving in the cold, they were weaponizing it. His ship's sensors detected temperatures dropping far beyond what his scientists had claimed possible on this world. Status of the ground forces, he demanded. Critical, Supreme Commander, his second reported. The new environmental suits are failing faster than the old ones. The increased power consumption is causing widespread system failures. We've lost contact with our entire eastern flank. The human attack came from all directions at once. Arctic Defense Force vehicles emerged from the swirling snow, firing cryocharges that exploded in bursts of supercooled gas. Each detonation created localized cold spots that dropped to nearly -100 degrees Celsius, overwhelming even the Pyraxians' enhanced heating systems. Hull breach in Sector 7, alarms blared throughout Tyrax's flagship. External temperature exceeding safety limits. Hull integrity compromising. The weather control arrays had created something unprecedented, a superstorm that was literally freezing the alien ships in orbit. Ice crystals formed on their hulls, expanding and contracting, creating microscopic cracks that grew larger with each passing moment. On the ground, the scene was even more dramatic. Pyraxian soldiers, their crystalline forms dulled by the extreme cold, began shutting down into survival stasis. Their mighty weapons, useless in the cold, fell from failing grip mechanisms. The few who tried to fight found their energy weapons producing nothing but weak sparks in the supercooled air. Captain Singh led her strike team through the alien lines, encountering virtually no resistance. Commander Winter, this is almost too easy. Their entire defense network is collapsing. Don't get overconfident, Isabella warned. Tyrax is no fool. He must have a contingency plan. As if summoned by her words, new alerts flashed across the command center screens. The Pyraxian fleet was repositioning, their ships forming a tight pattern high in the atmosphere. Energy spike detected. Lieutenant Patel shouted. They're charging some kind of massive heat weapon. Isabella's mind raced through the possibilities. The Pyraxians were desperate enough to try something drastic. All ground forces, fall back to defensive positions. Major Frost, divert all available power to the weather arrays. If they want to play with temperature, let's show them what Earth can really do. The aurora above intensified, its colors shifting from green and blue to angry reds and purples. The storm system, already unprecedented in size and intensity, began to change. Wind speeds doubled, then tripled. The temperature, impossibly, dropped even further. In orbit, Supreme Commander Tyrax prepared to give the order that would either save his forces or doom them completely. His ships had combined their heat cores into a single weapon, one that could, theoretically, burn away Earth's entire Arctic atmosphere. But before he could give the command, something impossible happened. The cold reached up from Earth's surface like a living thing, wrapping around his ships in tendrils of freezing air. Warning klaxons screamed throughout the fleet as hull plates buckled and drive systems failed. This is Supreme Commander Tyrax to all Pyraxian forces, his voice shook with a combination of fear and awe. Initiate emergency withdrawal. I repeat, all forces withdraw immediately. The retreat quickly became a rout. Ships that could still fly abandoned their ground forces, fleeing into the upper atmosphere. Those too damaged by the cold fell from the sky like frozen meteors, their crews evacuating in heated escape pods that looked like falling stars against the aurora-lit sky. Commander Winter watched the exodus with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. Status of the enemy ground forces? Most have entered protective stasis, Major Frost reported. Medical teams are moving in to secure them. But Commander, the storm. It's becoming self-sustaining. We may have created something we can't control. Isabella nodded grimly. They had won the battle, but nature, once unleashed, had its own plans. As she watched the swirling maelstrom above, she knew that the Real challenge was just beginning. The winter they had weaponized might prove to be an enemy far more formidable than the Pyraxians ever were. The storm had become a living thing, a swirling vortex of impossible cold that stretched from the surface to the stratosphere. Commander Winter stood in Arctic Defense Station Zero's reinforced observation dome, watching lightning dance through clouds that shouldn't have been able to hold electricity at these temperatures. "The weather arrays?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Non-responsive, Major Frost reported, her voice tight with concern. "The storm's feeding on their energy output, growing stronger. Current temperatures are impossible. Our instruments can't even measure them anymore." The tactical display showed the remnants of the Pyraxian invasion force scattered across the Arctic Circle. Most of their ground troops had entered protective stasis, their crystalline forms frozen in place like statues. The few ships that hadn't escaped were now embedded in ice, their hulls cracking under the extreme cold. "Commander." Lieutenant Patel's voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "Multiple thermal signatures approaching from the south. They're heading straight for the equator." Isabella's eyes narrowed. Supreme Commander Tyrax had revealed his desperate gambit. He's making a run for the warm zones. How many ships? 300 vessels, carrying what appears to be their entire remaining ground force. They're burning their cores at maximum output, creating a heat corridor through the storm. The humans had won the Arctic, but at what cost? The storm they'd created was growing beyond their control, threatening to plunge the entire northern hemisphere into an eternal winter. If Tyrax reached the equator and established a foothold. "Signal Captain Singh," Isabella ordered. "All mobile units to intercept positions. And get me a direct link to Supreme Commander Tyrax." The holographic projection materialized, showing Tyrax's command deck. The Pyraxian leader's crystalline form had dulled, showing signs of profound cold stress even through his ship's protective fields. "You've gone too far, Commander Winter," his translated voice crackled with static. "This weapon you've created will destroy us all. We're leaving your death zone, and we will establish our base at your equator. You cannot stop us without killing your own world." Isabella's response was calm, measured. "You still don't understand, Supreme Commander. Earth's weather isn't just our weapon, it's our ally. And it remembers its children." She nodded to Major Frost, who activated a sequence they'd hoped they'd never have to use. Deep beneath the ice, dormant weather arrays that had been gathering power for days hummed to life. The effect was immediate and devastating. The storm, already of unprecedented size, began to split and multiply. New fronts formed along the Pyraxian fleet's escape route, each one a concentrated tempest of cold and wind. "Impossible." Tyrax's voice held real fear now. "Your control systems are offline. How are you doing this?" "We're not," Isabella replied. "Earth is. Thousands of years of evolution have taught us something your species never learned. Sometimes survival means working with a planet's forces, not against them." The Pyraxian fleet's heat corridor began to collapse as multiple storm fronts converged on their position. Ships at the edges of the formation began to fail, their overworked heat cores finally giving out. Those that still functioned were forced to cluster closer together, making them vulnerable to concentrated attacks. Captain Singh's voice came through the command channel, "Strike teams in position. Permission to engage?" "Granted," Isabella responded. "But remember, we want survivors." The Arctic Defense Force vehicles emerged from the storm like winter wraiths, their cryoweapons targeting the Pyraxian ships' already stressed hull plates. The effect was devastating. Already battling multiple storm fronts, the alien vessels couldn't maintain their defensive screens against the focused cold attacks. On his flagship, Supreme Commander Tyrax watched his fleet dying by degrees. Nearly a third of his ships had already fallen, their crews evacuating in heating pods that were quickly swept up by human rescue teams. The remainder were burning through their fuel reserves at an unsustainable rate. "Commander Winter," he broadcast on all frequencies, we request terms." Isabella had been waiting for this moment. "All ships power down their heat cores immediately. Surrender control of your environmental systems to our technical teams. We'll guide you to safe landing zones and provide emergency heating for your crews." The Pyraxian surrender was total and immediate. As their ships powered down, human rescue teams moved in with specialized heating equipment, preventing the aliens from falling into terminal stasis. The war was effectively over. But the storm raged on. "Commander," Major Frost's voice was urgent. "The storm system, it's still growing. Temperature readings are dropping across the entire hemisphere. If we don't find a way to stop it soon." Isabella stared out at the aurora-lit maelstrom, understanding the true price of their victory. They had awakened something primordial, something that remembered when Earth was locked in ice ages that lasted millennia. Now they had to find a way to put it back to sleep, or their victory over the Pyraxians would become meaningless. "Begin emergency evacuation of all northern settlements," she ordered. "And get me direct links to every major weather control facility on the planet. If we're going to stop this, we'll need every resource humanity has." The war against the Pyraxians was over. The battle against winter itself was just beginning. The world had never seen a dawn quite like this. From space, Earth's northern hemisphere was barely visible beneath a swirling mass of white clouds shot through with auroral light. Temperature readings across Europe, Asia, and North America plummeted to historic lows. The weapon that had saved humanity from invasion now threatened to destroy them all. Commander Isabella Winter stood in the newly established Global Weather Control Center, surrounded by the finest meteorological minds from every nation on Earth. The room hummed with desperate energy as scientists and military personnel worked to contain the storm they'd unleashed. "Status report on the Pyraxian survivors," she asked, not taking her eyes off the global weather display. "All secure," Major Frost reported. "We've converted 3 equatorial bases into heated sanctuaries. Supreme Commander Tyrax is cooperating fully, sharing their thermal technology. Turns out they're as desperate to stop this storm as we are." The irony wasn't lost on Isabella. Their former enemies had become crucial allies in the fight against a common threat. Pyraxian heat core technology, originally designed to terraform worlds, might be their only hope of preventing a new ice age. "Commander." Lieutenant Patel's voice cut through the chamber. "We're detecting a new pattern in the storm's energy signature. It's resonating with something." The main display shifted, showing a complex wave pattern that pulsed in perfect synchronization with the aurora above. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's leading atmospheric physicist, stepped forward, her eyes wide with realization. "It's harmonizing with Earth's magnetic field," she explained. "The combination of our weather arrays and the Pyraxian heat cores has created a self-sustaining feedback loop. We can't shut it down because the planet itself is powering it now." For a moment, silence fell over the control center. They had weaponized Earth's winter so effectively that the planet had taken over the process, threatening to plunge them into an eternal freeze. Then, from an unexpected source, came a possible solution. Commander Winter, Supreme Commander Tyrax's holographic form appeared, his crystalline structure now adapted to Earth's cold. "We have been studying your world's historical climate data. Your planet has natural cycles of warming and cooling. What if we could remind it?" Isabella turned to Dr. Tanaka. "Could we use the Pyraxian heat cores to simulate Earth's natural warming cycles?" The scientist's fingers flew across her console. Yes, yes. If we calibrate them to match the planet's natural resonance frequency, we might be able to break the feedback loop. But we'd need unprecedented power, and perfect synchronization. You'll have it, Tyrax declared. Every surviving ship in my fleet stands ready. We owe your world that much. The plan came together with remarkable speed. Across the globe, Piraxian ships positioned themselves at strategic points, their heat cores modified to pulse in harmony with Earth's natural rhythms. Human weather control arrays were reprogrammed to amplify these pulses, creating a counter-resonance to the storm's pattern. All units in position, Major Frost reported. Awaiting your command. Isabella took a deep breath. Everything hinged on this moment. Begin sequence. The effect was subtle at first. The swirling storm clouds began to pulse with new energy, their patterns shifting slightly. The aurora above flickered as the magnetic field responded to the carefully tuned frequencies. It's working! Dr. Tanaka exclaimed. The feedback loop is destabilizing. Temperature readings are beginning to normalize. Over the next several hours, the great storm began to dissipate. Like a giant exhaling after holding its breath, Earth's atmosphere gradually returned to its natural patterns. The aurora faded, and the first natural sunlight in weeks broke through the clouds. In the aftermath, as temperature readings returned to normal across the hemisphere, humanity and Piraxians found themselves in an unexpected position, standing together, having learned profound lessons about both power and restraint. Commander Winter, Tyrax addressed Isabella as they stood watching the first natural sunset either had seen in weeks. My people have conquered many worlds, but none has taught us as much as yours. We came seeking to dominate your planet's environment, only to learn that true strength lies in understanding and working with it. Isabella nodded. And we learned that victory sometimes requires knowing when to step back. We almost destroyed ourselves by pushing Earth's powers too far. The legacy of the Winter War, as it came to be known, reshaped both civilizations. The Piraxians abandoned their policy of environmental conquest, instead developing technology to adapt to the worlds they encountered. Humanity gained not just new allies, but a deeper respect for their planet's natural forces. Arctic Defense Station Zero was converted into the first joint human-Piraxian research center, dedicated to understanding and preserving Earth's complex climate systems. The weather control arrays remained, but were repurposed for environmental protection rather than warfare. And high above the Arctic Circle, where the greatest battle had been fought, the aurora still danced across the sky, no longer a weapon of war, but a reminder of the delicate balance between power and wisdom, between conquering nature and working in harmony with it. Commander Winter stood at her old observation post one last time, watching the natural lights paint the sky. The cold wind that blew across the tundra was just weather now, nothing more, nothing less. And that, she reflected, was exactly as it should be.